Well, Ray McGovern joins us to talk about several issues. I want to get his take on Libya and the reports now even by NATO and the Russian foreign minister that they are planning a ground invasion sometime in late September, early October. More U.S. special forces have been inserted. We keep hearing the propaganda that Gaddafi's going to step down any day, but that doesn't happen. I also want to get into Rick Perry, who's called for the arrest of political activists who engage in peace actions. Now, this is a guy who was, of course, for forced inoculations of little girls of an experimental bad drug that Merck couldn't get approved, but by government mandating it, they got vaccine protection and were able to roll it out on the market. I'm talking about Gardasil. We're going to be looking at Rick Perry and also talking about some other issues that are taking place. Ray is a retired CIA officer turned political activist. McGovern was a federal worker under 7 U.S. presidents for over 27 years, presenting the morning intelligence briefings at the White House for many of them, President Reagan, George Herbert Walker Bush, and others. He served in the U.S. Army from 62 to 64 as an intelligence officer. McGovern also received an MA in Russian Studies from Fordham University, certified in theological studies from Georgetown University, and was a graduate of Harvard Business School's Advanced Management Program. Upon retirement, McGovern was awarded the Intelligence Commendation Medal from Bush, which he later returned. He, of course, also confronted famously on live television Secretary of Defense at the time, Rumsfeld, who said, "We never said there were WMDs in Iraq." And he goes, "Yeah, you said they were in Tikrit and areas around it." But, I mean, he dared say the emperor had no clothes. And we're here to get his take on some frightening developments coming out of Rick Perry and others. What do you want to tackle first, Ray, the Libya situation or the Rick Perry stuff?
Well, it really doesn't matter to me. We can talk about Gaza, since I had pretty immediate experience there with the attempt to break the blockade of Gaza.
Now, let's talk about that first, Ray.
Okay. We decided this year, after what happened last, and most of your listeners will remember last year, the Israeli commandos killed 9 people on the Turkish boat, the Mavi Marmara. Turns out, Alex, you may not know this, but we have done some more deep research, and turns out that only 8 of those were Turkish citizens. The other one was a full-fledged U.S. citizen, not a dual national. He never registered for Turkish citizenship. He was born here. And so the notion that there were 8 Turkish and 1 sort of Turkish, he didn't look like us. He wasn't really an American. Yeah, he had American citizenship, but, you know, his life was expendable. That was apparently put out by, I don't know who, the PR people in our government, to absolve Obama of any obligation, any responsibility for protecting U.S. citizens.
Well, after all, the U.S. has liberty. They were enemies with al-Qaeda as well.
So here you go. This year we decided to have our own boat. When I say we, I mean several of the U.S. passengers from last year. I was invited to participate, and lo and behold, we raised $400,000, mostly in places like New York and L.A., for example, and rented or chartered, I suppose the right word, a Greek ferry boat, and rehabilitated it. It was all set to go. We called it the Audacity of Hope. We had 36 passengers, including Alice Walker, and all manner of other young people and old people like me. And we were all ready to sail against all the warnings from Israel and from the United States. The Israelis said they were training sharpshooters, that the same thing would happen this year as last, that they had dogs that they were going to set on our deck, and that if we thought we were going to get through the blockade unscathed, we had another thing coming. Hillary Clinton said, for her part, "Don't you realize what happened last year, you audacious people from the Audacity of Hope? Don't you remember? People got killed. People got killed last year, so don't even try it." It was all in the passive voice, you know. People got killed. Well, hello? Who killed the people? It was the Israeli commandos, of course, but that never came out. And so, you know, instead of Hillary Clinton going to the Israeli commandos and saying, or the Israeli government saying, "Look, we don't recognize your blockade as legal," and that is the case. The U.S. does not recognize the Israeli blockade of Gaza as legal. And so that being the case, Mr. Netanyahu, we want to make sure that our 36 passengers, 5 crew, and 10 mainstream media folks get through without being raided or shot up. Instead of that, they told us not to go, and then when we insisted on going, we're already 10 miles out of the Piraeus port near Athens. The Greek Coast Guard intercepted us, drew us back to the harbor, and it became clear what had happened, and that is that with all the bravado about what was going to happen to us if we went ahead with this, cooler heads in the White House prevailed. And they realized that the president asked Netanyahu, please don't massacre, please don't shoot up our folks. Netanyahu would turn his thumb to his nose, as usual, and say, watch me. And so the only way to prevent what would have been a real catastrophe, a U.S. boat, U.S. territory, with Alice Walker, all manner of other people on that boat, including me, getting shot up, that would have been a disaster. And so what did they do? The U.S. leaned really, really hard on the Greek government and said, do not let any of those 10 boats from the Gaza flotilla leave port. And so that's what they did. And we made a break for it, but before we knew it, we had not only the Greek Coast Guard, but a Coast Guard cutter filled with these commandos in black, looking very much like the ones that attacked them off Imamara. After a 2-hour standoff, our captain decided, well, we weren't going to be able to get any further out of the Aegean. We were still in Greek waters. And so we came back. Now, what's the lesson here? Well, the lesson here is simply that, throw freedom of the seas aside, Israel was able, ipso facto, to extend its 12-mile limit into the Aegean Sea, up to the port of Piraeus near Athens. It's really quite remarkable. They were able to do that only because of the support of the United States leaning real hard on the Greeks, who were very vulnerable. Why were they vulnerable? Well, they needed a second economic bailout, financial bailout. Who runs the IMF? The United States runs the IMF.
Well, Ray, expanding on that, you had a lot of courage to be doing this because they had announced they were going to attack the ship. But from a PR perspective, why not let medical supplies into Gaza? Why not just, like Coast Guard, board the ship, check it out, let people through? Well, because they don't want humanitarian aid coming in there. And according to national law and international law, that is a war crime under the Geneva Convention.
Sure.
And if it's wrong for Russians to break the convention, it's wrong for Israel, and it's wrong for the U.S. To be a pawn in this geopolitical system. But expanding on that, I've also read about other boats that try to leave, get their rudders sabotaged. So there is a giant program going on here to keep aid from getting into Gaza. But now enters Israel, and of course their, I guess, minion, Rick Perry. But I want to go back. Why did you believe in this so strongly that you were willing to risk your life to deliver aid to Gaza?
Well, in a word, Alex, the 2.6 million people living in Gaza are being held in, what shall we say? Well, it's the biggest open-air prison in the world. They are being kept on a near-starvation diet. Israeli officials actually bragging about keeping the Gazans on a, quote, very, very strict diet, end quote. They're not going to starve, but the Israelis are preventing them from dying en masse so that there won't be any accusations of genocide. Now, that's no way any people should live. The Israelis are attacking Gaza again from the air. There needs to be somebody stand up and say, that's wrong. And when your government and my government is responsible for allowing the Israelis to do this, giving them $3 billion a year and supporting them at every turn politically, then you and I and all Americans have in my view, a moral responsibility to say that's wrong and to try in a peaceful way to demonstrate how wrong it is. Now, we didn't have any medical supplies. All we had were letters from thousands of Americans expressing support for the people of Gaza. So what we wanted to do is let the people of Gaza know that they're not alone, number one. And number two, we wanted to show that this blockade was illegal. And, of course, with the State Department unwilling to say it's legal, then it is ipso facto illegal. We're trying to highlight the plight of the Gazans, which really is a, it's the victim becoming the victimizer. What the Jewish people suffered in Germany is not very much worse than what they're subjecting to people not only in Gaza, but people in the other occupied territories that have been occupied for 44 years now, which is a couple of years longer than the Soviet Union occupied Eastern Europe. It's time for that to stop. And unless we raise consciousness around the world, and this is the interesting part of this, because of the ingenuity and the hard work of the people running the U.S. boat to Gaza, we had over 10 mainstream media on the boat. And I'm talking New York Times, 2, CBS, 3, CNN, 2, Democracy Now!, 2, a couple of others. Okay, Al Jazeera was represented by somebody else. Now, what does that mean? Well, they weren't just taking our picture, Alex. They weren't just interviewing us. They were on the boat when we made a break for it. They were willing to suffer the same fate that awaited us at the hands of the Israeli commandos. That's new. And the fellow from the New York Times actually did a very decent report.
Well, look, there's no doubt that Syria had a large part of its territory taken in the Golan Heights. And a few months ago, to watch all those men and women machine gunned who were peaceful, and to watch our so-called media call them cowards and evil and terrorists, I'm sorry, machine gunning people peacefully walking with their nation's flag in their hand, that's wrong. I mean, it would be wrong even, if Mexicans from Mexico marched across and people mowed them down. Of course it'd be wrong, even though I don't think Texas belongs to Mexico. You still don't mow them down with live ammunition, even if you're from the Israeli perspective that, no, we took this land because, you attacked us decades ago. Still, just the cold-blooded shooting of people, and to watch CNN, Fox, and others defend it as a very wholesome, good thing is a very, very dangerous trend. And now we see my big beef is Israeli intelligence advising TSA, Homeland Security, on the See Something, Say Something spy grid here in the U.S. and TSA on the streets. And then you have Rick Perry, and I wanted to get your take on this, Ray, coming out and saying arrest, I guess, Ray McGovern, arrest people that dared try to bring letters to folks. I mean, that's pretty scary.
Yeah, it really is. You would think off the wall here, but here is Perry with an official letter to Eric Holder, the Attorney General, talking about the dastardly deed we were doing in bringing letters of support to the Gazans, and how we should be brought up on charges of this or that. One of the senators, Senator Mark Kirk, went even farther, saying that we should be captured. We should use the Navy to help the Israelis interdict us. So in a way, this brings out the real craziness in our one-sided support for Israel. And I'll say just one more time that this is not good for Israel either, because they have to realize that this is not going to be able to be sustained, the situation, for many more years. I'm not talking long-term. I'm talking short and medium-term here. Something's got to give.
Well, Ray, I want to get into that, but going back to U.S. politicians calling for U.S. citizens to have the military used against them, Ron Paul has raised the point that they now have this extrajudicial killing of U.S. citizens on the books under Bush and now Obama, and his lawyers continuing it. I mean, this is some pretty dangerous stuff, and I see this as in the same avenue of saying these Gazans are subhuman. You're not even allowed to try to visit them, or you're seditious.
Yeah, there's a lot of sort of racism here, having to do not only with this, but with Iraq and Afghanistan. They don't look quite like us, and so it's okay to shoot Hellfire missiles from drones at them, sitting in a posh little office 7,000 miles away. It's really beyond the pale here, and talk about Gaza again. Well, that is collective punishment those people are being subjected to, and that's dead set against Geneva.
Well, Ray, I want to come back and get into the geopolitical analysis why you're saying Israel can't go much further along this line. I mean, I want people to be in peace. I want Israel, the Arabs, the Palestinians to be in peace. And Israel is losing the propaganda war by their arrogant actions. So we'll get your geopolitical analysis of where all this is headed.